Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Command Score Studio with
Eddie.
Yes! No offense, Alec, but Eddie is much better than you are at that. It's just, you know, it is a learned skill, right? Or if someone points at you and you just say your name, it takes practice.
You know, yeah, there's some like positive reinforcement early on. It's like you had to like give me like here's like a little candy for doing that.
Positive reinforcement.
Yeah. We're both like dog owners. We know how that works.
Yeah, I got Eddie treats right over here, and if Eddie's a good boy during the episode, Eddie gets the treats.
Then I get a Milky Way.
Milky Way? Is that? I thought I was gonna say Doritos for you.
Ooh, yeah, let's do that.
Well, on this episode, we're not talking about Doritos. Hashtag not a sponsor. What are we talking about, Eddie?
We should do that though.
We get sponsored by Doritos.
I'll wear a Doritos shirt. Yeah.
And they send you all the flavors.
Yes.
Top 5 flavors, go.
Spicy nacho.
Okay.
They came out with this new one that's like kind of a smoky queso sort of thing. That one's pretty solid.
Interesting.
Cool Ranch.
Okay.
Solid. Nacho cheese. It's the classic. They had like a pineapple one that's not for me. That's like similar to like Hawaiian pizza. You just don't put pineapple on everything.
Yes, you do. You put pineapple on pizza right now.
Okay, we're going to talk about commanders that have like unique abilities for kind of like their archetypes. So like we'll be talking about things that like, you know, is known for spell slinging. Yep. We know that blue loves artifacts, green loves, you know, land wraps,
right? No.
Sometimes. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about commanders that kind of go off the beaten path and try to do something that their brethren don't normally get to do.
100%.
And see some interesting results of that kind of little adventure they go on.
Absolutely. Yeah. So just like there are unique flavors to Doritos, there are also unique commanders in their identity too. There we go. Look, transition. Okay. So what's the first one that we're talking about, Eddie? And this one you're bringing up, I believe.
Yeah, this is the one that I added. I actually just got back from MagicCon Chicago. And this was one of the inspirations from that trip. The last game, I played against some great fellas, and one of them had an Ave Progenitor Ooze deck.
Spicy.
So it's mono green, and it has Storm written on it.
That is what mono green is all about. Always has been about.
Yeah. You know? So normally Storm is relegated to at least including blue, sometimes red.
Pretty much, yeah.
Maybe spell black if you're getting a little spicy, but almost never like green or white. So Ave Progenitor Ooze is 2 green for a 2/2 legendary creature ooze with, as we talked about, Storm. So whenever you cast Ave, you copy it for each spell cast before it this turn. Then copies become tokens because it's a permanent. Ave Progenitor Ooze isn't legendary if it's a token. So the original, like, actual card enters the battlefield as usual, and then you make a bunch of clone copy tokens, but those lose that legendary status, so they don't get sacrificed to state-based actions.
That makes sense. Otherwise, if it didn't say that, that would just be kind of disappointing for the most part.
Yeah.
There's some weird things you could do with
some weird, like aristocrats, I suppose, but that's not what it does.
It'd be very, very, very disappointing for someone who didn't realize that and built a deck around it.
Yeah. And then last line of text, Ave enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter for each other ooze you control. So that could be all the, it will see all of the other Aves entering the battlefield due to Storm, as well as any other incidental ooze tribal ooze tokens that you've made up until that point.
So lots of tokens.
Lots of tokens.
Lots of counters.
Yes. So those are very much up Green's alley. So with Ave, you get to do some spicy things. Mostly, if I'm being honest, a little combo-y. So if you're looking more towards the casual side, you could totally just go ooze tribal, because this will get stronger based on the number of oozes you control.
100%.
But the version I saw in Chicago that I was like, yes, this guy's onto something is Slime Against Humanity, a recent card from
$3 for a common.
Yeah. Yeah. So proxy it up, folks, if you want to. That's
probably about
fine.
$90 of your budget if you're buying 30 of these.
I've also seen some people do, and this is like completely personal preference, but like you can have like one copy just for reference, and then like like say you're in a mono green Ave deck, you can say I have 30 mountains in the deck. Anytime I have a mountain, let's pretend it's a Slime Against Humanity, much cheaper.
Yep. Let's use your imagination too.
Yeah. So Slime Against Humanity is 2 and a green for a sorcery that says create a 0/0 green ooze creature token with trample. Put X counters on it, +1/+1 counters on it, where X is 2 plus the total number of cards that you own in exile in your graveyard that are oozes or named Slime Against Humanity. So very much ooze tribal again. And then a deck can have any number of cards named Slime Against Humanity, hence the $3 price tag.
That makes sense.
So yeah, not only is it a sorcery, so you can like, you know, do some interesting things like, you know, copy it with, what is it, Twinning Staff, things like that. There's a few other artifacts that can copy things on the stack, but you can also just run 30 of them and get plenty. And mono green is very good at ramping, so you could just hold on to a few of these and then ramp it, and then like do a whole bunch of these and then, you know, top it off with Ave, and you'll get a reasonable amount of tokens and board presence and probably able to take someone out.
Yep.
So if you want to go like on the lower end casual, totally, but things get especially gnarly when you start adding in the more pricey combo-y pieces.
I saw some of the cards you included. I'm like, oh, yep, that's one.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So Food Chain, classic. It's mono green.
Yep. If I can find it.
Says exile
There we
a
go.
creature you control, add X mana of any one color, where X is 1 plus the exiled creature's mana value. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells. So like you need a little bit of storm count before this goes truly infinite with Ave, because obviously Commander Text has 2. This only adds, you know, mana value plus 1. So if you've built up the storm count a bit, then you truly can go infinite, because when Ave is put onto the stack, you'll get all those Ave tokens, and those tokens, since they're copies, they have mana value. That is a copyable value for Ave. So then you can sacrifice the token copies to Food Chain, sacrifice the original. Ta-da, you have, you know, 30 mana. You're good to cast Ave a few more times. Each time you cast
still
that,
counts the storm.
yes, each time you do that, you increase the storm count by 1, so you get more and more Aves, blah, blah, blah. You see where this is going.
Yes, math. Everyone loves math.
So then once you have infinite creatures, you can give them haste and you know, use various effects, Concordant Crossroads, Finale of Devastation. There's lots of ways to do that.
But then the other player casts Fog and laughs at you.
That would be hilarious. Yeah, I would applaud them for that. So there's also stuff like Phyrexian Altar, Ashnod's Altar, which let you sacrifice token copies. You can always filter a bunch of that Ashnod's Altar mana through something like Urn of Godfire. So yeah, Ave, mono green, storm. Just you know, it was really spicy. Plus, you know, your backup plan is I play a bunch of oozes and whack you in the face.
Exactly.
And play something like Biogenic Ooze, which is one that we could have mentioned earlier on the casual side of things. Just makes a bunch of oozes. The year end step, you put counters on all your oozes. Can activate an ability to put more oozes out.
Yeah. All fun things ooze. And yeah, again, with Slime Command becoming a card now, like you just have like an auto ooze deck backup, essentially.
Auto
like,
ooze.
Ave, plus just 40 of these if I want to spend 120 or if you want to proxy it. But yeah, I mean, definitely a commander that isn't all that threatening that you see kind of like out in the wild, and you're just like, it's like green doesn't want to do that. What okay, fine, like sure, have your little ooze thing, and all of a sudden like with a deck like that be like, oh my gosh, the potential. I didn't even think about Food Chain with that, but
it's gnarly.
Gross. What is Food Chain these days price wise?
It's actually gotten reprinted, so it's like expensive. It's like $15, but it used to be like a $70.
Yeah. That's one where I was just like, is that reserve list? It's not.
No, thankfully.
I mean, thankfully or not. I mean, do we really want more Food Chains out there?
I may have picked one up.
Oh goodness, for what?
I don't think you've seen that yet.
For what? You don't have to tell me. That's
gonna be a surprise.
I'll give you an Eddie treat.
What flavor? I think you're right, Mitch. Like this kind of goes for all of the decks we'll be talking about today. But the saltiness factor, people see, you know, like Veyron Storm or, you know, all sorts of other like typical Is It Storm stuff. And they like, okay, you did the thing. Congratulations. Roll my eyes, move on. But when they see Ave Storm, they're like, okay, I don't really care that I lost. That was awesome.
New. This is something that is unexpected.
Take some of the salt away and kind of just makes it a fun.
So if you want less salt, get oozes. They're probably like slugs.
It's good for your heart.
You know, so if you put like salt on the ooze, it would disappear.
I would say so. Yeah, probably don't want to do that.
All right,
Mitch.
Okay,
it's
let
your
me
turn.
scroll down because I put these in the wrong order, and I threw all of mine at the very end. So now it's just me trying to literally scroll down to try to find this while stalling and talking. And here we go. Arkellos Lagoon Mystic. So this one is in Sultai, which, when it comes to its color identity, it's kind of like, what would you say? Like ramp, draw,
control,
and tutor, control, value, I guess. So I guess in the control aspect, there is some of this to it, but it is just a unique approach where this commander, let me just read real quick. A 2/4 Turtle Shaman for 4 mana in Sultai. As long as it's tapped, other permanents enter the battlefield tapped. As long as it's untapped, other permanents enter the battlefield untapped. So basically, whatever this is, everything else is when it's coming into play. And you can build this in somewhat of a politic-y way, which is something that you really don't see in Sultai nearly ever. Usually Sultai is like, no, I get all the value, you get none.
Right.
So obviously you can build this one in a way where you're like, okay, I'm going to take the most advantage of this. I built my deck around this, and all of a sudden, yeah, I can control when our Kalos is tapped or untapped. Like you can have something very simple like Retreat to Coral Helm. Whenever a land is about for control, choose one, tap or untap target creature, scry one. So this one is just, well, it loves landfall decks, and you're in Sultai, so you obviously love
There's
landfall.
plenty of stuff to do there. Yep.
Lots of things to do there. So essentially, you can utilize this to, well, tap down your opponent's creatures, untap your own creatures, or yeah, just tap your own Archelos, so you're not selling it or sending it out into danger, essentially, and just a way to essentially say, yeah, you know what? Let's make sure you don't get any value. Or you might have some instant speed ways to get lands into play, like a, what, I was going to say growth chamber. What's the
there's a few
spiral
different
growth, or
growth spiral.
Growth spiral.
There's
all those
crop rotation.
Yep, all those creatures that tap that put them into. But yeah, essentially ways to control when your commander is tapped or untapped. Of course, there's other tapping effects that you can utilize.
Vehicles.
Vehicles work. There you go. You can Archelos vehicles. There you go. Driving around cars.
Turtles driving cars.
Turtles
They're
driving
so
cars.
slow. They just need a little help. Yeah.
There you go. Kind of like what was it, Zootopia with the sloth in the car. What's his name?
DMV. Oh man, I forget.
Flash. Was it Flash?
Sure.
Let me know in the comments below how wrong I am on that.
Quite. I don't know.
Basically, though. So with this commander, again, the thing is you can make deals with players. Be like, hey, do you want to speed things up on your turn a little bit? Maybe they have a land that's going to come into play untapped, essentially, or tapped, essentially, with like a ramp spell. Again, your ramp spells now have everything come into play untapped. Like a Splendor Reclamation, which can be just absolutely massive, especially if you have fetch lands, those kinds of things. Hey, all land cards from your graveyard come back to the battlefield, tap normally, but with this commander, it's like, no.
That's a spicy card.
Untapped. Basically Amulet of Vigor for your deck. And of course, just at a base level, like Simic Growth Chamber, your bounce lands, your lands that would normally come to play tapped, your more utility style lands, come to play untapped.
They ramp you now,
That ramp you and they speed you up so much faster versus your opponents. You are slowing them down basically a full turn by keeping your commander into play tapped. So make deals, politic. Yeah, there's that kind of control aspect, but in a very different way for Sultai. And again, one that players might not realize how powerful this commander can be because it is something that's different. It's not just your typical Sultai commander, absurd tasker value.
Yeah. No, I love Archelos. Back when this, I think it came out in Commander Legends.
I think that's right. Yeah,
because I did like a boxing league where everyone got a box of Commander Legends and built a whole
people.
Yes, we each got a box, and then we built a whole commander deck out of that box. And I picked Archelos, and he was super fun. So can recommend.
Very spicy
commander.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely. I think something pretty unexpected for the most part when it comes to
honestly,
how you might expect a Sultai deck to go. And again, you could just build it full kind of group huggy-ish, not group huggy, I guess, but like political control more so. Because again, you're gonna have some times where it's tapped.
Yeah. No, I like it. Honestly, like, I don't know that this effect is very common in any color combination. So you could have told me it was Jessica, and I'd be like, sure,
whatever. Yeah,
like that effect could be Jessica.
That is kind of true. That if it's something that's just so out there that you don't really see that on a commander at all, like Amulet of Vigor is colorless, so like it's the only really time we've really seen that effect.
Like blue seems to be like the tappy untappy matters color maybe, but
when it comes to this, you don't really think about
He's a pretty unique commander, which is why I made that episode.
Next up,
all right. So this is one that I built.
I'm hoping I'm clicking on the right one right now. I'm going to put these out of order. There we go. Got it.
Shifting Flame. 4 blue-red for a 5/5 legendary creature Sphinx Wizard. It has flying, of course. Whenever you cast a spell, put the cards in your hand on the bottom of your library in any order, and then draw that many cards.
Gross.
So Arjun, the Shifting Flame, is the commander that you want to play. If you're like, I put 99 cards in here and I want to see every one of them.
You literally will. If you
will, like, multiple times.
I don't like Singleton all that much, so I really just want to see everything.
Who needs a tutor when you can just go through your whole deck in one turn?
Oh, I just put this on the bottom of my deck. Well, I guess I'll get back to it this turn.
Yeah. So I built this deck because I had a wild hair and I wanted to build a unique commander.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, this is one of the most absurd ways to draw cards. Sure, you're not getting true card advantage because you're casting a spell, which is getting it out of your hand, and then you're drawing that many, -1
technically. Yeah.
So of course you can play card advantage spells, which either keep you neutral or positive. But I knew of some cards, and I had just disassembled a Phoenix Mill deck, and there's a card that's probably the golden pig called Psychic Corrosion.
Let's see if I can, oh, there we go.
There we go. 2 and a blue enchantment. Whenever you draw a card, each opponent puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard.
Wizards, reprint this. It's an uncommon, please. Thank you. It's $5.
Oh my gosh, it is $5. I didn't know that.
Yep.
But yeah, no. So this basically says, you're a few turns into the game, probably turn 5 or 6 at this point. You got your expensive commander out, so you need lots of ramp in the deck. So people maybe have like 80 cards in their deck on average at this point in the game. So you just need to draw 40 cards since this mill's one,
just 40.
Just 40 cards.
But yeah.
Which is totally reasonable to do, even on a budget.
Yeah, that's just what, 7 casts?
If you have a full grip,
6 casts, 42.
So there's super cheap cantrips like Opt, Brainstorm, any of these sort of things. There's a dozen or more of these types of effects in blue and red. There's, of course, redundant effects to Psychic Corrosion, such as Sphinx's Tutelage.
Not quite. I mean, it depends on the deck you're playing against. If you're playing against a monocolor deck, so
this can be bigger.
Can just literally win you just with one activation of or trigger of your commander.
Teferi's Tutelage is another kind of backup effect for this.
Yep.
Some cards that are important in my experience, and one that I really want to note is Teferi's Ageless Insight.
Oh my gosh!
It's an
it's
enchantment
finally budget.
for 4.
Finally budget.
Yes.
$1. I mean, still it wasn't like absurdly budget, but
you can see immediately how ridiculous this card is.
Insane.
If you would draw a card except the first one you draw on each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. So like this halves the amount of spells you need to cast, if not even more, because if once you discard 6 and draw 7, then you cast another spell, discard that, draw 14, draw 28. Like I've played this deck and legitimately almost decked myself to the point where like I would recommend maybe considering a Laboratory Maniac or other effect. That
or if you want to be funny, like Obstinate Familiar.
Yes, I did. I put Obstinate Familiar in the deck.
It's so janky.
It's so janky. And where else do you get to play it?
I don't think I have.
I don't have it
list,
here.
But it's like a 1/1 lizard for a red, and it's like you can choose not to draw a card.
Right.
Like,
you can just be like, nah,
when
I'm good.
would you do that?
Here is when you would do that.
Is when you would do that.
All right. And I put a lot of other cards that we could talk about, but honestly, the only other couple that I kind of want to mention that are pretty good. Mind Moil, 4 in a red. It's basically a substitute Argent in case it gets removed. It's also a mana cheaper in case you happen to draw it early. Whenever you cast a spell, blah, 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 same thing as Argent. Some other finishers, if you don't want to go the pure mill route, would be Psychosis Crawler. It's a classic commander card, normally seen in like Wheels decks. But
this is kind of, I mean, it's kind of Wheels. It's like it's self-wheel. It's self-wheel.
Yeah, and then there's some other all-stars like Niv Mizzet Perun. Whenever you draw a card, damage anywhere. Locust God. Whenever you draw a card, put a Hasty Insect out. Kind of functionally the same thing. And then there's some other stuff like Teferi, Temporal Pilgrim. Whenever you draw a card, basically if it says whenever you draw a card, it's pretty good in the deck.
Yeah. Just Scryfall search that.
Yeah. So I played the deck a number of times, and it's a little bit of a glass cannon because Argent is 6 mana. The next, if it gets removed, then the next time it costs 8. So you want to be ready to, like, if you're gonna put Argent on the battlefield, you want to be like ready to win the game. So in that way, like, it's a bit combo-y,
which
but like
can be a bit difficult to do too sometimes because like what your first play is gonna be, but you're gonna lose your hand. So like you just hope you draw into something else that can help.
Yeah, which typically there's so many redundant effects that you can do that no problem.
Redundancy is definitely very important in this one.
Yeah, but like I never played a game and people were like, "Oh man, I lost to the mill deck in Is It?" Like everyone loved playing against this deck. Funny. It's the only time I've played mill and people were like excited about it.
Well, I like that's no offense to anyone out there that does not like to play against mill. Like I never understood people having a problem with playing against like a Phoenix deck. Like,
I got a lot of
I
targeted.
I just don't get it. It's like people don't like to see their own cards like in their graveyard. It's like you weren't gonna. How did you know you were gonna draw that card? It's random on what you're getting. It's random on what you're getting. Unless you're setting the top of your library and that player mills that card, you don't know what you're getting. So like, I would have got this and then that would have happened and I would have won. Would have, could have, should have. Who cares? Get milled.
Trouble is, they normally hit you in the face before you get to
true.
So that's why
mill doesn't win because everyone else is like, you milled my cards. Everyone attack.
Yeah.
Darn you, Phoenix player.
Ooh, what I needed to do. I'm just realizing this years later. What I needed to do is whenever I mill someone, I hand them a Dorito. So it's positive reinforcement. You get milled, Dorito.
Bring the Eddie treats with you. Yeah, perfect. Get everyone's cards greasy too.
Yeah.
What's that card do again?
I can't read. It's too orange. All right.
It's too orange.
So that's enough about Argent Mill.
Fantastic.
I love the deck.
Nice.
Mitch, what's your next pick?
A really weird one, and one that like I love when they explore. I'm just saying, Killing Ink Duelist. I love when they explore spaces, especially with uncommon commanders that we haven't gotten to before, because again, like I feel like Wizards has done a very good job and also a very terrible job in my opinion with uncommon commanders, where it's like literally just unplayable garbage, or ones that are just like, hey, a copy of this other commander but worse, like just strictly worse, and it's like no one's gonna play that. But when you get like, hey, like this isn't an overpowered effect, but it is a unique different effect that we have not seen, especially in these colors, Killian Inkduelist, 2/2, human warlock with lifelink and menace. Who cares about those things? I mean, they might matter a little bit, but I guess if you're like going like Voltron, you can care a little bit.
Lifelink can matter. Yeah.
Sure. But hey, for just 2 mana, and also says spells you cast that targeted creature costs 2 less to cast. That is a huge effect, and one that like you don't see anywhere, and you especially do not see in Orzhov colors. So this you can kind of get into like a spell slingy type approach, or like an auras type approach. There's different things you can do this, and again, it's any creature. So creatures you don't control, creatures you do control. There's a lot of spicy things that you can do this one. And again, just a different approach. Like Orzhov is typically like, hey, sacrifice things, make tokens. That's basically what Orzhov does. Death triggers, you know, ETB triggers, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I love Killian. It was definitely one from Strixhaven, which seems like yesterday, but it was actually years ago.
Oh my gosh. It's like 3 years ago at this point, right?
Yeah, it's been a while. But yeah, no, I love it. Kind of like combat trick tribal.
Yeah.
Super fun. Yeah, with
absolutely.
Just the right amount of control. And it's one of those effects too where Wizards of the Coast is always going to be printing this type of effect. Like every set, Killian is going to get a new card to keep the deck fresh,
100%.
Maybe improve it a little bit.
I mean, just Scryfall search the word target, and there you go.
Yeah, there's going to be so many things. So yeah, I love that. Decks that tend to like be able to change over time. It just, for me, it keeps them fresh, keeps me like reaching for the deck and wanting to play because there's always something new that I haven't seen in a while. So yeah.
100%. I mean, cards like Acrobatic Maneuver, not efficient at all. A not terrible card, but one that is compared to overcosted. Like compared to like a Cloud Shift, it's just worse. Like you don't want to pay 2 extra mana essentially to just, you know, blink a creature typically. Yep. So exile target creature controller, return the card to the battlefield. Owner's control, draw a card. Notably, Cloud Shift does not say owner's control. It says your control. So if you happen to threaten a creature and then you Cloud Shift, you've sealed forever. Ha ha ha. Yep. Anyways, they messed up on that one maybe, but now with the other ones, mostly it's just
They thought of that now.
They were like, oh no, because people are degenerates like me and play mirrored mean decks sometimes. But anyways, with this one though, again, this one draws a card. So it's basically Cloud Shift, but drawing a card, but 2 extra mana does not equal card drawn, typically, right? No. Yeah. Typically, you don't have to pay that. So with Killian, this is a 1 mana, basically Cloud Shift, and essentially, hey, you get to draw a card as well. So it's potentially good protection, or it's actually just good, well, if you have an ETB value, essentially, you can do a lot of cool things with that.
Like you said, if someone's trying to remove one of your creatures, you can do that to blank the removal, or if there's a giant Ave Progenitor ooze coming after you can block with Killian, and then unless it has trample, you can, you know, flicker it, and then it'll be removed from combat, no damage dealt, you know, and you can draw a card.
And again, it's just a cantrip. You can kind of like turn these like 3 or 2 mana cards out there into spicy cantrips, which you typically don't have access to in these colors because like typically a 1 mana draw spell is usually in blue or maybe red. Yeah. But basically like being able to get these kind of effects, this kind of value, you don't get. And now you can utilize some weird cards.
And I love, and plus this is 15 cents. Like all those cards that everyone else is so focused on efficiency, Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile, you know, no colorless mana because we just want the bare minimum to do the job. And Killian's like, you know, if you give me just a little bit of extra value for 2 colorless, like sign me up.
100%.
So you get to access a lot of cards that otherwise people avoid.
And ones that aren't nearly as efficient. Absolutely, like you said, like Utter End. Like it's a good card when it comes to being able to target things, but 4 mana is a decent amount, and so like it's outclassed compared to other things like an Assassin's Trophy just costs like 2. But yeah, exile target online permanent's very, very good. But now for 2 mana, if this was an actual card that was like, hey, Orzhov colors, exile target online permanent, instant speed, no downside for 2 mana. I can't tell you an Orzhov deck that wouldn't utilize it, essentially. So
that'd be
with
a
Killian,
card.
With Killian, you get all the efficiencies of inefficient cards. And also like, then you know, of course, you can go with auras too, and like something like Sage's Reverie. I never know. Reverie. That I was wrong twice. A chick creature for 4 mana, but again with Killian, it's just 2. Enters battlefield, draw a card for each aura you control attached to a creature. +1/+1 for each aura you control attached to a creature. Again, if you're going auras wide, my goodness, the amount of value this has. Again, for just 2 mana for you, you're drawing probably 5+ cards, giving a creature +5/+5 at least, and it can just grow throughout the game too. So, again, absurd amounts of value to be had for a commander that, again, thank you Wizards for actually putting some time and effort into uncommon commanders sometimes. You don't do that all the time. But yeah, being able Killian's a great one. So all right, moving on. Next up.
This is another one that people see across the table and are like, yeah, I'd play against that. It's Glunch, the Bestower. 1 green white. So we're in Selesnya for a legendary creature, Jellyfish. 0/5. It's a flyer. And it says, at the beginning of your end step, choose a player. They get to put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature they control. Choose a second player to draw a card, and then choose a third player to create 2 treasure tokens.
Really quick. Why do they have like sea creatures just flying miscellaneously, like jellyfish, whales? Like, why do they have just flying?
This is a D&D thing.
Why?
You're gonna
They're
have to
in the ocean. Like, just
magic, Mitch.
give them Island Walk instead. That makes so much more sense.
No, Glunch is, I think,
Bring back Island Walk.
I would love to hear this in the comments, but I think so. There's a whole like creature class in D&D called flumphs.
So they're just floating creatures because like you wouldn't just like be walking around in D&D and then all of a sudden there's a jellyfish in this plain field that you're in.
Yep.
Because it has to be flying or it's just like flopping on the ground essentially is literally the reason. That's only reason.
Yep.
Okay. Got it. Because of land combat. That's basically it.
Yeah, because D&D, man.
Got it.
Just,
okay.
You know,
Continue.
imagination.
Sorry for that little side.
All good. So Glunch can go a whole bunch of different directions. It can, strictly be group hug. Like, I'm going to give you resources. Some people just love to do that.
Yeah.
Totally cool if you want to do that way. Alternatively, it can just be really flexible because you can just choose whichever mode for you is most beneficial in that moment, which is true. But you can also like build your deck around you getting one of those 3 more often than the others. And I think Glunch opens up one deck in particular that Selesnya doesn't get too much access to, and that is like treasure.
Yeah.
Decks.
Oh yeah.
Because mostly treasure, we see it a lot in red.
Black's got a decent amount too.
Black's got. I mean, every color is starting to get treasure, which is kind of a common complaint actually. But most of the time, you don't think treasures as being a Selesnya thing.
If I saw this commander, I wouldn't be like, yeah, that's treasure travel.
Right. So you can, like maybe give 2 +1/+1 counters to, whoever's not that threatening. You can give someone else a card draw who's like really far behind, and then you can make the 2 treasures. Because there's actually a lot of stuff in green and white that has treasure support, but you just never really think of it that way.
Yes.
So I've got a few cards here. I'm just going to go down the list real quick. So Dispatch. This is basically a better Swords to Plowshares very easily in this deck. So it's an instant for 1 white that says tap target creature, but if you have Metalcraft, which is just 3 or more artifacts, you exile that creature. Guess what? Treasures, artifacts. Great. All that glitters. 1 and a white for an enchantment aura. It says enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. Guess what? When we have 20 treasures, very easy to do.
Your commander's a
Your
one-shot
commander's
KO.
a flyer.
Yep.
Has evasion.
Because it's a jellyfish and jellyfish fly.
Yeah, of course. What else would they do? There's another one, Sarenth Steelseeker. It's been one that I've loved in a lot of decks. 1 and a green. For a human artificer scout 1/2. Whenever an artifact, notably not non-token artifact, just whenever any artifact enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. If you don't put the card into your hand, you may put it in your graveyard. So you're like, it's huge card advantage in this deck. So even though you're maybe giving up the card draw off of Glunch's ability, like you're going to be hitting your land
You're still
draw.
just like, oh, I get like 2 lands off the top, or I get 1 off the top, plus I just get rid of this card I don't need, put in my graveyard.
Yeah. There's one that's just coming out with Fallout, the Brotherhood Vertibird. It's a flying star 4 vehicle. It has flying, just like our friend Glunch, of course. Its power is equal to the number of artifacts you control.
Notably, Glunch cannot crew it unless
you put 2 counters on it.
There you go. Look at that synergy.
Synergy.
There you go.
Another one that people were really hyped about, but it's kind of fallen down, but it's really good in this deck. Monologue Tax, 2 and a white. Whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, you create a treasure.
Really fun art.
Yeah. Tireless Provisioner, 2 and a green. Landfall. Whenever a land enters a battlefield under your control, create a food or a treasure. You're going to choose treasure
How is this
every
uncommon?
time.
Like,
It's a ridiculous card.
my gosh,
my
Wizards.
goodness. Yeah,
the
this
valuation on this is just absurd.
This should have cost, I don't know, 2 more mana. It's
there are
ridiculous.
mythics that are 20 times worse than this card.
Yeah. I'm going to skip a couple here, but we're going to go to Mondrak, Glory Dominus. Very simple. If you would create 1 or more tokens, just twice as many instead.
$36.
So, like, you'd play Mondrak. On your end step, Glunch makes 2 treasures, turns into 4. You just paid for Mondrak.
Gross.
It's free spell.
Free Mondrak.
Similar to Monologue Tax, let's have some more people throwing up coins. That's Smothering Tithe. Of course. Everyone's favorite. You had to have it here.
Oh, yeah.
Another one from Ixalan. This one's pretty spicy. Thousand Moons Smithy.
Alec just brought this one up, too.
Yeah, Alec loves this one. Yeah, me and Alec are pretty high on
card.
it. So
They have a lot of investment. They've actually bought thousands of it, and they're stockpiling, so they're hoping that just skyrockets in price.
my wife would kill me. 1,000 Moons Smithy enters the battlefield. Make a gnome artifact creature token with its power and toughness are equal to the number of artifacts or creatures you control. At the beginning of your combat, you can tap 5 untapped artifacts and or creatures you control to transform it. It basically turns into a land that can tap for white and make more of those soldiers. This one's one of my favorites. And it's very common in like Osgear decks,
Oh, yeah.
other artifact decks, but we're in Selesnya, so we get to play it. Bronze Guardian, 4 and a white, double strike, ward 2. Other artifacts you control have ward 2, and its power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. So
it's going to take someone out one shot.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the last 3 are maybe some of the most impactful that I have here, despite the ridiculous cards we've already talked about. Emissary Green, new card from the clue set. Don't forget some of those. Human Advisor, 3/3. Whenever Emissary Green attacks, starting with you, each player votes for profit or security. You create a number of treasure tokens equal to twice the number of profit votes, and put a number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control equal to the number of security votes. Yeah, so it's just pretty solid.
Yeah, and again, if you actually just work with Glunch that first time, just get counters on this to start, you can actually make it harder to block too and actually protect you as well.
And
so
it's an
there's
attack
different synergies.
trigger, so it'll get the counters before blocks.
100%.
Yeah, so. Bootlegger's Stash. This one also
Goodness.
was talked about a lot when it first came out. And I don't think I evaluated it that highly. Green has so many ways to do ridiculous amount of things. But in this deck, I think it really has a home. Bootlegger's Stash is 5 and a green for an artifact. Lands you control have tap to add a treasure token.
Yep.
Normally that's just like banking mana, which has been done before and isn't that valued. But
when you have extra artifact synergies as well.
Yeah, this card goes nuts. And we would be remiss if we didn't mention Old
One
Gnawbone.
that I just cannot every single time it comes out when I'm playing Interior Dragon, it's like, oh, that's game over. Yeah, you just get 40 treasures for hitting me, or for hitting everyone.
7 green, another D&D card. 7/7 flyer. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many treasure tokens.
Oh, gross.
Like, even if it just said, like, when Old Gnawbone did that, that would be playable.
7 is fine. That's great.
Yeah.
No, every creature.
It's ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
So anyway, like, moral of the story is Selesnya treasures. Like, people, again,
you don't expect that.
You don't expect it. People don't love treasures generally. That's kind of overdone. But when you do it in an unexpected way.
When it first came out, like Curse of Opulence, is that Opulence? I think, or Verbosity. I can't remember. I think it's Opulence. Is the
Opulence is the treasure
like
curse,
finally, like we're giving other colors ways to ramp. Like red is finally getting ways to get mana.
Right.
And then it's like, oh no, what have we done? Oh no, what have we done?
Yeah. And now we gave green the 2 like best mass producers of treasures in Old Gnawbone and Bootlegger Stash.
Oh, by the way, they also have like doubling season, those kind of things.
Oh yeah, doubling season is ridiculous.
Great.
Yeah. So I really like it. It's kind of a fun little twist on things, and people see Glunch and they're like, oh, Glunch, that's so nice.
100%.
Yeah. All right, Mitch. Next pick. What do you got?
Moving on, Ruxa, Patient Professor. I think this is a very funny commander, and one that I do think. Okay, so green is about power. Okay, green is about power, but typically it's like, hey, these days, 4 mana, you get like an 8/8 with all this text on it that does all these things. And this is the exact opposite of that, where it's like, no. Let's simplify things, okay? Vanilla. Best flavored Doritos, too, right?
Don't give them
I don't think they have Doritos like, Johnson, write that down. Write that down. Vanilla Doritos. I've probably done it already before.
Frosted Doritos.
Frosted Doritos. Oh, God. Okay. So we've got a 4/4 Bear Druid for 2 green. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, return target creature card with no abilities from your graveyard to your hand. Creatures you control no abilities get +1/+1. You may have creatures you control no abilities assign their combat damage as though they weren't blocked. So vanilla, for those who don't know, is just like the term for creatures that have no abilities. Basically, just flavor text on the thing. That is it.
You get your power, you get your toughness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And years ago, we used to get vanilla creatures all the time. And I think it was actually famously last year or 2 years ago, we didn't have one. We didn't have like one singular one.
Yeah, the last vanilla creature, I believe, was Yargle and Multani.
Yeah, exactly. So we have had like, again, the number of text, the amount of text that's on cards these days is going up, and Vanilla's going down. But you know what? Rux is like, let's bring it back. Let's do some crazy things, because with this one, it's like, okay, I get card advantage. I mean, from recursion, essentially, from getting things back out of your graveyard. I get an Anthem effect, and also I get basically Thorn Elemental effect for all my creatures, where I can just assign my combat damage and be like, it doesn't matter how big your army is. I'm just going to say, nah, you didn't block, and then take you out.
Yeah, and even though there has been a trend away from vanilla creatures in Magic sets in general, notably like creature tokens, token makers still make plenty of vanilla creatures. So
100%.
Like, you don't have to worry about like kind of that issue, that one thing I said about Killian, where you're always going to get new cards. You might think that Ruxa would be kind of relegated to never getting new cards, but you just have to keep an eye out for green creature token makers.
That do not say like, hey, they also have trample. Like, just don't.
Which I love that term. It's French vanilla. If it's otherwise vanilla, but just has like one keyword, it's called French vanilla by designers.
That is pretty funny. I've heard that term before. I don't remember what exactly it applied to. But that's hilarious.
I think that's great.
But with this, you get to play with complete garbage cards for like any other deck out there, like Leatherback Bailoff. Goodness gracious. I mean, okay. I'm not trying to bash Leatherback Baloth. It's a cool card, right? 4/5 for green, green, green. So not many decks can utilize it because it's very specific mana cost, and also like, why would you? It's a 4/5.
Yeah.
With this commander though, I mean, with that little pump as well, it is a 5/6 for 3 mana that you can assign combat damage is not blocked. Also, you have potential to get back out of your graveyard. And believe me, there's ways to snowball pretty effectively once you get so many creatures out. And some other Anthem effects out there, which again, with your Anthems, you have to be careful too that you're not like adding Trample, like Overwhelming Stampede, not good because it's like, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
still
a good card,
Still good,
but it's not like playing into theme. You'll kind of neuter some of the other effects.
Exactly. You want to just, if you're trying to stick to the vanilla and really dedicate yourself to it, you need to ensure that you're like, okay, all my pump effects are just generic pump effects that do not add any other keywords, essentially.
Right. Yep.
Which typically be worse, but they're better with this one.
Yep.
I mean, also just a pump effect like Muraganda Petroglyphs. Creatures no abilities get +2/+2.
Yep.
So now with that, plus your commander, you basically, what's the Dragon's Roost? Is that what's the Crucible Fire? Whatever it is.
Yeah,
what's the
for dragons. Yeah,
Crucible Fire. I know I said Dragon's Roost. That's a different thing. That's like pay.
There's
7
only
mana.
26,000 cards to remember.
Pay 7 mana, make a 5/5 flying dragon. I think it's Dragon's Roost, enchantment.
You got me on that one.
Anyways.
Yeah.
This one, though, basically, again, your creatures get +3/+3, which, again, your vanilla creatures are already going to have an efficient power and toughness because they're vanilla and you're in green.
The Baloth would, with Petroglyphs plus Ruxa, would be a 7/8
for 3 mana. That is basically, again, Thorn
That's
Elemental
a
is
little
a
compelling,
7/7. Yeah, that, like, literally can just get damage to run opponents very quickly, very effectively, very efficiently.
Yep.
Also, Gigantosaurus. You have like crazy things like this one where it's like a 10/10 for 5 mana because incredibly specific mana value. And again, it's vanilla. It's not doing anything else.
Yeah.
So, yes, you can do some pretty crazy things with Ruxa. And in my opinion, again, pretty fun things that are unique to Ruxa because when are you ever utilizing vanilla creatures? Like basically never. Like Gigantosaurus sometimes in like very high power, like very
Sylvala
type decks where like you care just about the power toughness, but like, but with this, you're more so working on ones like Leatherback Baloth sees no play at all. Or
I would love this deck as like an end of the night, like my brain is fried. I don't want to think about anything. I'm playing vanilla stuff.
You literally don't have to worry about keywords. You're just like put creature down.
Put creature down, swing with creature.
Hit you with creature.
Are you dead yet?
Cool.
No?
Okay.
I swing with creature again.
I swing with creature. You block, don't care. Damage to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ruxa, I think
math isn't even for blockers in this one.
No, there literally is no math for block. I mean, like, yeah, you get the get your creatures like out, but that
you want them to survive. But
you want them to survive, but
Ruxa can get them back if you mess
exactly.
up.
Just get them back. You swing again. That's just that's how it works. Okay.
Yeah.
Next up.
Meria, Scholar of Antiquity, 1 red and a green for an elf artificer. She's 3/3. She has 2 abilities. One is to tap an untapped non-token artifact you control to add 1 green mana. And the second ability is to tap 2 untapped non-token artifacts you control to exile the top card of your library you may play it this turn. So mana generation, a little bit of impulse draw. It's basically like the Urza we have at home.
Safer Urza.
Sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I built it on a $30 budget. I can send you the deck list later if you want, Mitch. But
absolutely.
I've been really impressed, and it's super fun, and it's kind of like one of those Rube Goldberg machines where like every turn is different because you're like, okay, do I need this for mana? Do I need this like to hit my land drop or to do something else? A lot of the things that I built into it also have mana sinks, so like abilities that you can sink into them in case you have a turn where you have a lot of excess mana, because this deck can make a lot of mana. Okay, so for example, and I also love that there's often in sets these kind of inefficient, same for Killian, like these inefficient artifacts that in this deck really shine.
Yeah, they're amazing.
I love commanders that kind of let those cards come through. One of them being from Ixalan, Dowsing Device, 1 in a red. Whenever Dowsing Device or another artifact enter the battlefield under your control, up to 1 target creature you control, it's +1/+0 and gains haste until the end of the turn. Then transform Dowsing Device if you control 4 or more artifacts, which you will. And it transforms into a land that adds red, or you can pay 2 in a red to tap it, and until end of turn, target creature gains haste and gets +X/+0, where X is the number of artifacts you control, but only as a sorcery. So I mean, like having it as an artifact, you can always tap it for green with Meria. So like if you don't have that threshold met to transform it, it's still mana ramp on 2. And
it's still a mana rock for 2, which is what the efficiency you're looking for typically.
Right. And if you do meet that threshold, then it turns into a land, which is, safe from like Vandal Blast effects. Plus, you can easily threaten Commander Lethal with Meria with that ability. And this deck loves cards like Elsewhere Flask. It's just 2 generic. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. If you see anything that looks like that, it's good here.
Literally.
So similar to your Joyra deck in that it's like kind of an eggs deck if you want it to be. Eggs being, something that you can sacrifice for value, very cheap artifact. Basically, a lot of those also have a secondary effect that we don't care at all about. So Elsewhere
Typically,
Flask also has something else that it can do, but I don't even know what. Golden Egg, just another example, too, and it replaces itself to draw a card. And notably, like even if these were creature artifacts, Meria's ability doesn't care about summoning sickness. So like obviously Golden Egg doesn't care about summoning sickness since it's just an artifact, but you can like tap them right away even if it is an artifact creature.
Yeah, just the clarification on that because it's artifacts.
It's part of the cost.
It's part of the cost. It's not. Yeah. It's not like it's not giving them that ability.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Very similar to Urza in that way.
Yes.
Some of the win conditions in the deck. One of my favorite is Reckless Fireweaver. It's 1 and a red. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. There's a lot of different types of this effect.
Yeah, like impact tremors, but specifically for artifacts.
But for artifacts, Kessig Flame Breather, I think, is on cast for non-creature spells. Saren Steel Seeker, one of the ones that I had mentioned for Glunch earlier, again, cares about artifacts entering the battlefield. Just make sure that you hit your land drops. And here's a couple that I really love. Battered Golem.
That thing is so janky and so good in this deck.
So good. So it's 3 mana for a 3/2 artifact creature dash golem. So like we mentioned earlier, even though it's an artifact creature and has summoning sickness, it can tap the same turn it enters with Meria's ability. Battered Golem says it doesn't untap during your untap step.
Oh,
shucks.
Darn. There's no way we can ever untap it.
Whenever an artifact comes into play, you may untap Battered Golem.
Keep in mind that also includes your opponent's artifacts too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so just picture this. You got Meria in play. You have Battered Golem in play. You play Elsewhere Flask.
Yep.
You tap Battered Golem for a green, float a green. Play Elsewhere Flask for 1 mana using the floating green and 1 other. It enters the battlefield. Untaps Battered Golem.
Draw a card.
Yeah, it basically like all these eggs that can trip, do the card draw thing, cost half as much.
Oh, 100%.
And it just goes burr.
Yeah.
Like it just taps
100%.
a whole lot. And like I mentioned, this deck has a few mana sinks. I have one of them later on here, but that you can sink a whole bunch of mana into and just go nuts. So this is definitely one of those. In a similar vein, for 1 more mana, you get Traxos, Scourge of Krug.
What a janky commander.
Yeah, I love this one. I had this one at a pre-release, and it
really
just
cool
wrecked.
art. I think you just see
earlier
that. Like I've not seen this art before.
Trample 7/7 for 4, so that's a good rate by itself. Really good blocker. It enters the battlefield tapped and doesn't untap during your untap step. Darn
it.
Whenever you cast a historic spell, untap it. Artifacts, legendaries, and sagas are historic. So same thing, just goes burr. Sarenth Great Worm. This is a card that when it got spoiled, I was like, I want a home for this, but I had no deck for it. And then I started brewing this deck, and I'm like, wait a second.
You're ruining this because my next commander might have this one too.
It's so good.
You've ruined it, Eddie. I'm restarting the episode.
So it's a 7/6. Does this not have... Oh, it's a worm. I always thought this was like flying because it looks like a dragon.
No, it's not a jellyfish. It's just a worm, Eddie.
It's just a worm.
It doesn't
wouldn't
fly.
have flying.
It doesn't fly.
This isn't in D&D. So 4 green, red for a 7/6 trample worm. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, create a tapped Power Stone token. Doesn't say whenever a land under your control.
Nope. Opponents as well. And
any lands.
Players like to play lands and ramp lands and fetch lands. And
yeah. And so Power Stone tokens, it's an artifact. It is a token, so you can't tap it to Meria's abilities, which is a bit of a downside.
Difference
but you
between
can
Urza and Meria, essentially.
But its only restriction is that it can't be spent to cast a non-artifact spell. You have a ton of artifacts, number 1, but it also doesn't say that you can't use it for activated abilities. So you can totally use that colorless mana for any activated abilities you have, such as the last card we're going to talk about, Hellkite Igniter.
Such a fun
I love this
condition.
one. Number 1, the art is metal.
Oh, yeah.
5 red for a 5/5 flying haste dragon, unlike our worm friend. 1 and a red activated ability. Hellkite Igniter gets +X/+O until the end of the turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control. This thing just...
It's going to be absurd.
It has haste.
Yeah.
So unless someone has instant speed removal, someone's going to die as soon as this comes
Or
out.
they have a flying blocker. But there's always one player that doesn't have a flying blocker, and they're like, oh, no, it's me. Oh, no, it's me.
Oh, no, it's me. So yeah, Hellkite Igniter, another great finisher.
Very cool.
I've just loved this Meria deck that I put together.
It's really
so
spicy.
fun, especially even on a budget. It really can go fast.
Well, and again, I'm just... Gruul, you do not think artifacts.
No,
you do
don't.
not think artifacts at all. And that's why they can make a commander like this in Gruul because, I mean, in blue, it's already Urza. But, like, also Urza's just brokenly
right,
good.
and people don't see this the same way they see Urza in
100%.
my experience. They're like, oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have, like, Urza is a lightning rod. Like, people see Urza and alarm bells start
You will be
ringing.
the first person taken out. Unless the other person has, like, Crick, Son of Yawgmoth, or the other person has, like, Corval. Or the other person has...
Or Kinnan. Who would play
Kinnan?
Kinnan?
Yeah, who plays Kinnan?
Jerks.
Anyways.
All right, that's all I have to say about Meria. Super fun commander.
Spicy pick.
Yeah.
All right, I also have a somewhat similar commander to that one in Gruul as well, Svella. Ice Shaper Svella. A 2/4 Troll Warrior, legendary snow creature for 3 mana and Gruul. Pay 3, tap, create a color snow artifact token named Icy Manalith with tap at 1 mana of any color. Basically, just make a mana rock.
Yep.
6 in Gruul colors. Tap, look at top 4 cards of your library. You may cast a spell from among them up paying its mana cost, but the rest of the bottom of your library in a random order. This is a commander that, again, you do not think artifacts when you think Gruul. I guess now you should. Because
we should after this episode.
After this episode, and these 2 commanders that represent this essentially. But this is a commander that goes about it in a different way, whereas Meria is like, hey, utilize these artifacts to great effect, again, either temporary card advantage or mana. This is like, no. I will make you the artifacts that give you the mana, which typically, again, with Gruul, you're like, no. Focus on land ramp. Because if you have green, you're almost always utilizing lands as your ramp source. With this, let's like, no. Let's play around with artifacts. Let's do some crazy things. And let's get some random things off the top of the library, too. Let's do like a little Urza spin, essentially, and just get some random value. Why not? So with this kind of a commander, and this is one that you've actually pointed out before to me, Sting the Glinting Dagger, I did not realize that was less than $1. I kind of like,
super good.
I wrote this card off as one that was going to be more than $1 automatically, so I was like, I'm not going to be able to use this. But my goodness, when you're like, no, it's like 90 cents-ish. I was like, what?
Yeah, we just... No one tell the Krenko Mob Boss players this card exists.
That's very true.
That'll keep it under $1 and save us a lot of pain.
And there's a lot of Krenko players out there that are probably watching right now. I would say don't pick it up. You probably should. Sting the Glinting Dagger, 2 cost, equipment equip 2, +1/+1 haste. That's nice already. Be able to activate it right away. At the beginning of each combat, not just your own, each combat, untap equip creature. So untap 4 times on each trip around the table, and equip creature's first strike as long as it's blocked or blocking a goblin orc. That doesn't really come in handy too often, but
the rest of it's good enough.
Apparently not trolls, which are somewhat similar, but that spell is a troll. But anyways, whatever. Being able to untap your commander on each turn is absurd, especially when your commander has an ability that gives you more mana. So basically, what you need to do is just activate your commander. Cool, I got another mana rock. Awesome. Next turn, untap. Activate my commander. Every single time. This, I mean, Seedborn Muse obviously is a very good one thing for it too. It's very expensive though. But also you can kind of stack onto that and get extra value out of something like, Agatha the Vile Cauldron.
I love this card.
It's so spicy.
Yeah.
Activated abilities, creatures you control cost X less to activate, where X is Agatha's power. Effect can reduce the cost of less than 1 mana. You can also pay and give other creature control +1 trample on a turn. This is one that even if it's at 1, if you've got no other way to pump this, that is fine. Reducing the cost down to just 2 mana to make a mana rock is absurdly more effective. So yeah, just being able to find these like little efficiencies in there is great. And if not, yeah, you still have a lot of mana rocks that you're making. You have a lot of untap. You're going to store up so many mana rocks that you're creating more mana rocks with, and you can just get to a crucial point where you just have so much mana.
Yeah, and I mean, there's tons of haymakers in green and red that you can use as well to like finish the game.
100%.
Or you can just sink it into Svella.
I mean, why would you finish the game though when you're having so much fun?
Right.
Yeah, like if you're having a good time, just keep it
just
going.
Making my little snowman over here out of mana
volume.
rocks.
Sarenth Great Worm, already mentioned by you. Eddie stole my thunder on this one, but yeah, whenever land is battlefield, create tap Power Stone token. So again, maybe even if you aren't focusing on land ramp, maybe you have someone there too. Your opponents probably are. You're also in green, so you got ways to get lands back, that kind of stuff. But mostly, again, just getting free Power Stone tokens, that's great. And you can utilize these, of course, for Svel's abilities, which are incredible. So you're just building up this resource of Power Stones. And again, like Eddie said, utilizing cards like Hellkite Igniter, being able to finish off the game in those ways, because finally, I guess you can end the game. Put your opponents out of their misery. You can if you want. But yeah, being able to utilize artifacts in a different way, you typically don't see that in Gruul. So I like commanders like this where it's like, you know what? Let's do something completely different outside of this color identity's typical way to build things.
It's really fun.
Awesome. All right. Last one, I think, Eddie, right?
Last one. Yep. And it's a doozy.
It is a doozy.
So this is one that Alec actually kind of pioneered and built, and he disassembled it because it was way stronger than he wanted it to be.
Typically think.
And Alec is a gentleman and didn't want to pub stomp us all the time. So Roalesque, Apex Hybrid, 2 green, blue for a 4/5 legendary creature, human mutant. It has Flample. When Roalesque Apex Hybrid enters the battlefield, put 2 +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control. Sometimes relevant, mostly not.
Mostly what you care about is that last part.
Yeah, when Roalesque dies, proliferate, then proliferate again.
Gross.
So Roalesque came out in an era before the commander death rule changed. So it used to be that if your commander died, there was a replacement effect that just put it to the command zone, so it didn't actually trigger death triggers.
Which is very confusing, especially for new players.
Right. So cards like Skull Clamp, anything that had like, a death trigger like Sotesa decks, they have a lot of death trigger matters things. So
Unless
Elenda the Dusk Rose didn't work at all.
Unless you actively put your commander in the graveyard, which typically you don't want to do, especially, and I guess there's like return permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand things in green. But like,
it's an extra loop that you have to care about.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
No, generally speaking, you don't. But then a couple years after Roalesque was printed, they changed the Commander Death rule, and some people cared, but no one really went back. I mean, some people certainly, but not very many people went back and were like, this Roalesque guy, except for Alec. Alec did think about that. And that's what brings us here today. Alec built another off-the-beaten-path deck, so again, a unique build of Planeswalkers, and I know you love Planeswalkers.
They're my favorite thing. I left Magic before they existed. I came back and I was like, what are these things with all this text on them that players like to take their time when they're...
Thank God you didn't come back in 2023.
Well, I've got 3 options here and 3 options here and 5 options
there. Oh,
and
then it flips over to another side.
Flips over to another side, and this turn's going to take 20 minutes, and I'm not even storming.
Right. Yeah, and so that's base. Alec doesn't have this deck anymore because it did so much stuff. Okay, so for example, this deck basically aims to get Roalesque out. Maybe have a couple Planeswalkers or maybe +1/+1 counters or other counters matter sort of things that you'd expect. And then clones Roalesque through a variety of means. You generally want to keep the original out and let the clones die to the legend rule. Since the rules changed, you do get those death triggers. And I mean, you would have in the old world as well, but you wouldn't have gotten the original Roalesque if it was removed. But anyway, then you proliferate and proliferate again. And you can basically ultimate most of your Planeswalkers the turn they come out.
100%. It's like build your own doubling season.
Yeah, it's build your own doubling season, plus you can just put doubling season in the deck because they're in green.
That too.
There's a whole bunch of other kind of redundancy effects. So Blade of Selves can go onto Roalesque, gives a myriad, so you get generally 3 copies of Roalesque, so that's 6 proliferate.
Trying to find this one. What mana value?
It's very top, very top.
Oh, it's the very top?
Yeah.
What? Why is it at the very top?
Because it's only 2.
Oh, it's only 2. Oh, I was thinking of, what was I thinking
Oh,
of?
you're thinking of Helm of the Host.
Helm of the Host, thank you.
Yeah, no, we want our creature to die. We don't want it to be...
it was only 2. The equip cost is 4. There you go.
The equip cost is a bit steep.
There you go.
Phantasmal Image is just 2 to get another clone effect.
Yep.
Croaking Counterpart, you can get 2 for 1 off that one because it has flashback. It's so great.
Notably, Roalesque is not a frog.
He's a non-frog creature. Let's see what else we got. Mirror Image, another cheap variant on that effect. You got Phyrexian Metamorph, the granddaddy of them all, Rite of Replication. That'll make 5 copies, which will then proliferate 10 times, unless you have something spicy like the new Techathol Inquiry Dominus. If you would proliferate twice instead, so then you get 20
times. So that's a lot of indestructible counters on this.
Yeah, and plus if you have Teferi Master of Timeout, then you just get to take 2 extra turns after this one.
You're gonna go infinite and you're gonna win.
You're just gonna get turn after turn after turn, and people are gonna scoop it up. There's all sorts of other spicy things you can get that put counters on it, like Lux Cannon just turns into a machine gun.
Cannon. Oh
a
my
classic
gosh!
one.
I wish that one was. When I was building my charge counters, I was like, why is this above $1?
Right?
Yeah. Who is using this?
Just barely. Other fun things with counters, Crystalline Crawler, you can basically go mana positive in a lot of cases. Ickermoon Gauntlet gets to basically make anything a Teferi for the -12.
If they have 5 Planeswalkers, you just scoop. Because literally, you can't get around them winning with this.
Yeah, no, for sure. As Foretold is always a spicy
it's
one.
Such a spicy card.
You just get 1 counter on it, and then
it's only 22 cents now?
It's super cheap. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, they've changed. I think it was reprinted in Doctor Who, so yeah.
Yep.
Umezawa's Jite. You just have to hit once, and then you can start putting -1/-1 on creatures and just control the board way more than you would have thought.
I think it's Band of Modern, right?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's just so much spicy stuff that you can do with Roalesque. You can put Skull Clamp in here because it now has death triggers. Izuri, Stalker of Spheres, is in the list here, so that says if you do. Whenever you proliferate, you can draw a card. That's the
I'm
text
sorry,
we
but
were
I'm trying to
looking
keep up with Eddie on this.
I'm trying to go fast. I know it's a long episode.
Eddie's fault right
It is
now.
blame Eddie. I can take it. But yeah, moral of the story is Roalesque Apex Hybrid. If you are looking for an offbeat Planeswalkers build and you understand what being a Planeswalker deck entails, give it a try. Atraxa, you get to proliferate at the end of the turn. That's tame.
Once.
Tame.
Exactly.
I say no. I say we proliferate 10 times in a turn.
I say we do some absurd things. Ultimate Planeswalkers right away.
Yeah.
And then, actually, that's the thing that would speed up the game because ultimates.
Then you just
some ultimates, many
the
ultimates end the game. Versus some Planeswalker decks are like, no, value over time, wipe the board. Value over time, wipe the board. Decision.
No, we don't want any of that.
No. Your decision is ultimate win.
Yes. Yeah. So Roalesque, Planeswalkers, and Simic. I mean, I'm a Simic player at heart, but even I
What?
What?
You play Simic? I did not know. Well, I knocked something over.
Anyway, so there's our list. Of course, there are tons of commanders that are pretty unique in what they do.
Yep.
Whether it's their color identity, whether it's just an effect that doesn't exist anywhere else. So this is only scratching the surface. I'd love to see what you guys have down in the comments.
100%.
Any spicy decks that you brewed, that you played against.
Or spicy Doritos that Eddie should try.
Yep. I take those for sure. We should have a Patreon tier to just supply
donate
Eddie Doritos. Yeah. And just I'll track my weight
Eddie
over
treats.
time.
Yeah, Eddie treats.
Yeah. That's thanks for indulging my podcast idea here,
That's
Mitch.
great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I like talking about stuff like this. So let us know in the comments below what your favorite unique commanders are. Let us know if some of these you don't think are unique at all and we're completely off base, and that's a fun conversation to have too.
Oh, yeah.
Let us know what your favorite flavored Doritos is if you like Doritos.
Maybe we should put a poll out. Yep.
Yeah, and also pineapple on pizza, yes or no? I'm a yes, Eddie's a no. Let's get that debate going on.
We really need that.
That's actually the main debate that should be happening in every Magic chat. Regardless, thanks again, Eddie, for joining.
Of course.
And of course, as always, thanks again, and blame Eddie in the comments below, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.